Senator Eric Schmitt, Republican of Missouri, who was the state attorney general at a crucial time when that case was coming together. That is now, I believe, before the Supreme Court. Senator Schmitt, great job. How are you, and are you pleased with how things are going at the Supreme Court right now?
I am. I think the arguments went fine today. The briefing has all been submitted. The record is strong. We won at the lower court, won at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and basically showing that the government coerced big tech companies to do their bidding. And they can't engage in censorship, and they can't outsource that censorship to some of the biggest companies in the history of the world either. And you had Elvis Chan. I mean, we took his deposition. He was pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story. You had, during COVID especially, where these abuses took place, you had the government working with big tech to silence voices of dissent. And that's just simply unacceptable in this country. We believe in free expression. We don't think the government can censor. And we don't think, again, that they can outsource that to these big tech giants either. And that's what this case is all about.
It's incredible what they were doing. I mean, FBI involved in domestic politics, getting all excited about Super Tuesday. Here's a moment from today's oral arguments. This is the new Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I believe her name is. Lots of folks are talking about this, and it is pretty fascinating. Let's listen.
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. I mean, what would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. So can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that, because you've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective, and you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems.
Senator Schmitt, she is worried that the First Amendment might hamstring the government. Isn't that kind of what it's all about, sir?
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. Think about it. When we drafted the Constitution and the First Amendment, which was the very first amendment to protect individual liberty, was created, we were rebelling against what? A tyrannical king. And this is what we know, that tyrants throughout human history have used emergencies, real or perceived, to aggregate, exercise power that they never should have had. And people look back and say, how did that happen? Well, we don't have a pandemic exception in the Constitution. We don't have that. I mean, the Constitution is actually meant for hard times to protect against an overzealous, overreaching government. And so I think, Justice, I don't know why she would be confused about that point. That's pretty basic First Amendment law. And so here we are now in the digital age, with this case now, standing for the proposition that you don't get to have big tech actors as an extension of the state do what you can't do yourself, because it would be illegal for the government to censor. And again, they can't have it and do an end run around the Constitution. And I will just point out, this is not just a one-off of a couple government officials. This was a leviathan of government agencies, agencies working together to suppress millions of posts. We've never seen anything like this before in this country. It's Orwellian, it's breathtaking in scope, and that's why we were successful in the lower courts, and hopefully we'll be here at the Supreme Court.
Very briefly, because I got another question. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, right? So is that a pretty significant fallback for any administration? Well, we didn't make a law here. We just made a phone call. You can make a phone call, right?
Yeah, the government's argument here is, well, this is just a conversation we're having with big tech. This isn't tantamount to coercion. And here's the problem with that argument. The government, these are companies that exist under the protection of Section 230, meaning they're supposed to be a platform. They're not like a newspaper. They can't be sued. So when you have the government with all of its power sort of threatening to take Section 230 away, I mean, you had Joe Biden saying these companies are killing people And then also sort of antitrust investigations because of the consolidation of this industry. It's a very real threat. And so you saw in the correspondence go back and forth. They took it seriously. They took the threats from the government to get this done or else very seriously. And so, again, that's all on the record.
Hey, one more thing. Big tech, they think you know your stuff. I know where you come from. You are a subject matter expert, but they kind of run circles around a lot of members down there. Big tech thinks they're smarter, and in many cases they are. Are you worried that they're not containable? I mean, Congress versus big tech. You know what I mean? It's a tough one. It's a tough one for the people.
Right. When I was AG, we tried to bust it up. I mean, they're too big in many ways, but also I think that if you're going to basically, they got that protection in 1996 when the internet was supposed to be this democratization of information. It's a consolidation of power right now. And if they're going to act like editors and they're going to censor, they should lose that Section 230 protections. One other point, I've got legislation in the Senate that would say if any American can sue an individual government actor if their First Amendment rights have been violated by that government actor. So instead of one AG bringing a case like this, you'd have an army of patriots standing up and saying, we're going to protect our First Amendment rights and we're going to sue people because they've abridged our rights. And so I think, again, that would be change the culture of all this. Right now, I think a lot of these folks just think they can get away with it.
And as we say goodnight, sir, if I could take another look at D33, video of Elvis Chan, has the FBI shown any kind of contrition or any kind of effort to reform? I mean, this guy was, what do they say in Washington, D.C. or the Beltway, way out over his skis. I mean, the stuff that he said out loud, the FBI has no, am I right? I mean, it struck me as like wildly outside their bounds, what they're supposed to do, utterly crazy. Has there been any reform that you've seen?
Well, I just think that you can't hide behind this general, we're looking out for disinformation and misinformation as a reason to censor speech, right? That's a really dangerous deal. And look, they had the Hunter Biden laptop in November of 2019. And we're telling these social media companies, look out for a Russian hack and leak operation that was, as they testified later in an affidavit, that this was Hunter Biden's laptop. So anyway, they were involved in things they should have never been involved with. We've seen that over and over with going after Catholics, too. Yeah.
Senator Schmitt, Republican of Missouri. One of these days, I want to go in that St. Louis Arch right behind you.
You should do it. It's great.
Remember in that movie, what was it, National Lampoon's Vacation? It was very similar. Can we stop? No.
That's right.
One of these days, it looks amazing. Thank you, sir.